This is Digital Marketing Fastlane. This podcast will show you how to build, launch, grow, and scale a widely successful online business. Listen to real conversations with proven practical strategies and success stories. You're going to learn how to generate more traffic, more sales, more profit, and customer lifetime value for your online store. Coming to you from the online marketing experts at Voy Media, here's your host, Kevin Urrutia.
Okay, hi everyone, it's Kevin here. Today I have Kurt Foreman from Brewfest Partners. Hey Kurt, how are you doing?
I'm doing great,
Perfect. Kurt, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then maybe how you got started with your business?
Sure. So I started Brewfest Partners approximately 17 years ago as a part-time venture. Quite honestly, I didn't expect to be doing this as a full-time venture. I had a very nice career with a manufacturing company as a sales and marketing director. But I did my first project back in 2004, actually started planning for that in 2005. And it wasn't until almost 5 years ago, I think the 21st of March will be 5 years, that I walked away from that job to do Brewfest Partners full time, because the number of projects I took on kept growing and growing. And I really felt there was an opportunity to grow the business further.
How did you feel like when you decided, what was that moment like when you decided, hey, like 5 years ago, I want to do this full time, and then leave your other old job that you've been there for so long, such a long time?
So, I don't really exactly have a timeline, but I've always had this entrepreneurial drive in me. Most corporations really do not, larger institutions or organizations really don't appreciate entrepreneurialism, because you're kind of, siloed into what your responsibilities are. So it was probably 7 years ago or 2 years before I left my company that I started to really plan for an exit, to be able to do this full time. To do this 12 or 13 years and prove out the model was more than enough time. I just was not in position to do it, to leave earlier. And I wished I could have, but it's neither here nor there. That's just what the cards that were dealt me.
And then sort of, how did you kind of manage both of those things? Like, when you were starting out, I guess essentially you were working on this for 12 years while still, doing your full time. How did you kind of manage your time, I guess yourself, personal time, and also maybe family time?
Yeah, very, very good question. It was insane. And as I look back at it, I would think that most anybody who was watching me do this was probably thinking I was a little insane. So it was very difficult. My job that I had was requiring me to travel internationally. So I'd be on different time zones and working on projects, or I'd come home from the office at 6 o'clock and I'd work until midnight, sometimes 1 o'clock on projects. My lunch hour, I really didn't take any vacations. So I was using it for building this business. For me, it was doing what was necessary to make sure this thing was going to happen right. And I had a longer view of where I wanted to be. And I was fully aware of the risks that I felt that I was taking. But I also felt there was enormous risk by me not making the decision I made. From that standpoint, the balance was hard. I mean, my family and my wife saw what I was doing, and it did take time away from a lot of those things. Those are things you just have to come to terms with, because it always looks different once you get into the details than it does when you first got started and you had an idea that I was going to go play golf in my golf league every Thursday. As soon as I left my job, I left my golf league because I didn't have time for it anymore. So,
do you think that's like a good idea for other entrepreneurs to be doing that? Kind of like you said before, you're working full time, but also doing this maybe on the side and using up all your spare time, as in, just with cash flow, or essentially funding your own business.
Yeah, I mean, every scenario I imagine will be different for an entrepreneur. I think the bottom line is you have to do what's necessary. I'm a very driven person, for better or worse, and I knew what it was going to take, and I'm very passionate about my business, and I threw everything I could at it. And many times I threw energy at it to make up for my lack of knowledge or expertise or smarts in some case, So if I tell people you need to find a balance, I would be probably lying. I mean, I've not found that balance. It's hard.
Yeah, it's we've talked to other people. It's when you're running your own business. Even for me, like I wake up thinking about it. I go to bed thinking about what's going to happen tomorrow, or just like in general, it's really hard to completely disconnect. And at least for like maybe guys like us, where we're just growing our business and it's not there where we want it to be yet. I think that's sort of the dream that we're always chasing. Is when is that going to be there yet? But
Yeah.
you just never know because it's always changing, and then it's always next year it's a little bit higher or something like that.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there are points in time where I feel like I've reached burnout, and I try to find a way to recharge my batteries. I feel like I have arrived,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm also going through the stage now where how much larger. I mean, I'm pretty much a one-man person with part-time people that are doing secondary gigs. I have a very unique model, and that's where I pull my resources from. But I'm always thrilled to find new opportunities, and certainly flattered when people say they want to work with me. Projects come and go. Sometimes, they don't take off, so you have to be willing to emotionally cut the cord from those things that are not profitable
Mm-hmm.
or don't work out well, and then get yourself into something else. And I've been fortunate that project opportunities continue to roll in every year, even sometimes when you go weeks or months and you feel like, okay, what's going to happen? And all of a sudden, boom, we're doing 5 new projects this year.
Oh wow.
So like I said, everyone is a little different, but that's how we deal with that.
And then I just want to go back into sort of something you said earlier before. Like you said, you have a lot of drive. Sort of, where does that drive come from? Was it like something in your family? Was it something you always grew up with? What kind of drives you to, be more successful? Like entrepreneurs are very driven. I kind of want to know, where does that come from you?
Yeah, I believe it's a personality trait. I'm if I look at my personality, I've always, I wasn't the best student for a whole host of reasons. But I always, and I was afraid to try. I was afraid of failure when I was younger. I had 3 older brothers, much older than me, who were very athletic and well liked and good in school. And I always felt growing up that at some point I just didn't have the confidence that I could be like my brothers, although I idolized them, and maybe to a wrong point. But I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. My dad was a serial entrepreneur. Full disclosure, he wasn't a really good business person. He failed at a lot of things. And I worked for him from the time I was 12 years old through probably 18.
Mm-hmm.
I learned more by working for my dad in a small little mom and pop business, whatever one he decided to get involved in. And I learned from his failures. And that was really I don't know how to say it, that's the best education I could have ever gotten, and it served me really well. I mean, I am a risk taker, but I'm not. I don't shoot from my hip. I guess I always say on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm probably a 7.
Yeah, you need to take risks. Yeah,
and you do, and you don't want to get paralysis from analysis, and not make decisions. And I've caught myself doing that as well. I'm fortunate that the vast majority of the bigger decisions I've made have worked out well. And when I've made these mistakes, I try to learn from them like anybody else. And sometimes it's hard when you're used to doing things the same way to not get yourself set up for failure again after you've just gone through something. So, that's kind of my background. I've always kind of been a fighter that way, and not in the physical sense, but in the struggle. I like to struggle. I like to win. I like to find my way, and I like to prove others wrong.
No, that totally makes sense. It's similar to, I guess, my background is, we grew up, I have 2 older brother, older sister, and a younger sister. But like my brother and I were always working with our dad. We were like 10, 11, kind of following whatever random side projects he was working on. And that's sort of where we got like our work ethic from, and saw him doing things. So I guess that's where, I figured that's sort of what I wanted to do. And like you, I wasn't good at school, and I just like never really liked it, but I've always felt like I'm unemployable. I always tell people like I'm unemployable. I literally cannot have a job because I just have too many of my own ideas, and I want to do my own thing every single day.
Sure.
So it's one of those gifts and curses. You probably have that as well, where you just have so many ideas. You just want to execute, and then you're just like, I got to focus on this because it's working right now really well.
Yeah. That was my main frustration in 30 years of working for, in a traditional work setting, where it was hard to advance and sell your ideas, especially when you're a change agent. That caused me a lot of conflicts. It's just the way I am. And I sometimes, run over people with my ideas because I'm so passionate about them. And it's not meant to be disrespectful. It's meant to be, it's just meant to be that I want to see this thing work through. And it became evident to me that in the environment that I was in, that I was compensated extremely well, but they weren't using my skill set and what I could offer for growth. Yeah. And I was seen as a threat by a number of people. And it was painful for everyone, myself and everyone around me and my team who worked for me and who saw me going through that.
Yeah. Sometimes I guess sometimes you just gotta leave the environment you're in to pursue your own goals and destiny because other people don't see it. And kind of like what you said, sometimes people feel threatened by just your skills because they're not as driven or motivated as somebody on their team. And then perfect. Okay, so I want to go back to kind of what you said, like, throughout your, I guess, 17 years of doing Brewfest, you've experienced kind of like burnout. What are some ways that you've done or you used to sort of, I guess not feel burnout or get out of that symptom that you kind of just feel like you're working too much?
You just have to find the right time where you feel you can step away and develop some type of system where you can recharge your battery. And I can't say that I actually have one per se. I know when I'm fresh and exhilarated and excited and can work. And then I also know that when I have kind of a brain block or I feel like, we came off a project that there was, 12 to 16-hour days for 4 days straight this last weekend. And, I'm going to be 58 this summer. It took me a while. It was a very successful project. I had a great time doing it, but I just could only bite off a little bit each day this week because I was tired physically, emotionally, mentally. I was tired. And so I'm kind of getting myself back into that. So I don't force myself to work when I can't because I've learned from my past experience that when I am prepared and ready to work and I feel like I want to, I can make up for all that lost time. Yes. And so I've convinced myself, and this is a recent development over the last couple of years.
Yeah, it makes sense. Sometimes I guess, even for me, I just put in the hours and feel like you're really doing something, but you're not doing as much as you could be if you just have a good solid, 4 or 5 hours of maybe working. Correct. And being distracted with everything else because you're kind of just like randomly checking things here and there, and it's not really work that's moving the needle. Can you talk to more about like your actual company, Brewfest, and sort of what it does, and sort of maybe how you got into it, or maybe are you a huge beer lover? Is that something that's part of your life, right?
Sure. Well, I've been doing events for pretty much my entire adult life. I was even doing events in high school. I've always liked gathering, getting people together.
Oh, so you're always like bringing people together as a connector type of.
Yeah, I like planning the events. I could conceptualize things, very small things. Some things were mischievous. But when I was in college, I came up with an idea for a music festival for my hometown of Racine, Wisconsin. It was in the throes of planning a new lakefront. Was right on Lake Michigan. So they were planning a brand new marina, festival park, and lakefront development. And I wasn't really pleased with kind of the entertainment offering in the city of about 85,000. And to make a long story short, I went about the process of thinking about what kind of event that would do well here with this new facility. And there was a number of different things that happened in that sequence, but over probably from my first idea of conceiving it was in 1982. By 1988, we had a 20,000 person festival, and I had no experience in doing anything like that, And that became a really big icon in the community where we had a 4-day event drawing 35 to 40,000 people. And we had a working board of directors, and I wasn't paid. No one was paid really to work on this thing. And it was really a passion and an obsession by, our group of 12 people. And I burned out of that. And a lot of the relationships that I had in that organization just kind of were fray because the direction I wanted to see us go versus where a lot of other people were trying to take it. And so I left in 2002. But before I left in 2001, I actually pitched the board of directors about doing a beer festival. And we really worked on the music festival about 9 months out of the year. You know, it was a social thing. We were friends. We were professional. It was probably one of the most professional nonprofit volunteer organizations I've ever seen. But no one wanted to do the beer festival. It was just another one of Kurt Foreman's ideas, and it cost everybody a lot of work. The other one did. Yeah. So it's one of those things that if anything has changed my trajectory of what I've become, it's because that board of directors said no. Mm-hmm. Had they said yes, I would have been working on that project for free still today. Yeah. You know, but the fact that they said no and it just got put on the shelf, after I left that board the next year, I went about finding a group that would want to do it with me. Mm-hmm. And I did it for pay. You know, I did it for profit. Yeah. I found a nonprofit that could get the licensing. So the model really is based on this. Is we do events in 7, 8 different states now and do consulting. All the events that we own, we work with a local nonprofit partner, primarily to be able to get a beer license because we don't carry a license, and also to be able to collaborate and create as much of a localized event that will most of the time it supports a cause that my wife and I feel worthy of support. And so many times we get all of our resources in terms of manpower, volunteers, connection to the community through these partnerships that we do throughout the country.
And then for these events, does your team reach out to the local organizations, or do they come to you because maybe now you're known, but in the beginning, did you reach out to them and say, hey, Wisconsin?
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. I will say that it's been a combination. But that was in the early years, as you pointed out, where we would go out and try to find somebody that fit our criteria. And we have written criteria for everything that we do. But really, the vast majority in the last 5, 6 years have been groups that have found us, and we had to vet them, find out if, and the ones, it seems like the ones that found us are the ones who really want to see it happen. We don't have to sell them. They're selling us on working with them. So it's a little bit of a reverse relationship that way.
And then do you ever work with, for-profit companies, or is that just a different thing or different licensing type of deal that you would do?
Sure. We have worked with a few for-profit, and those are fine. I mean, again, I believe in what nonprofits do if their mission's aligning with what my beliefs and expectations are. But I believe in profit as a motive because it makes you better. It makes you control expenses. It makes you shoot for excellence because you're going to be measured on the success of that event. And the idea of excess profit, you make too much, I just think that's all garbage because once you achieve a certain level, if you're not consistently working on having a healthy enterprise on your P&L, you're going to be destined to fail. I mean, you have to forever prune the tree and get rid of things that aren't working and change pricing strategies and change management and those that's an ongoing task for every single one of these events. And we really need to be better at doing that. But I think that's the one thing that's the takeaway, I think, I don't care if you're in a for-profit business or a nonprofit business, you still have to run an exceptional enterprise to be able to be sustainable.
Yeah, you just need to run something that's efficient and sort of every year look at some of the cost-cutting cuts that you could do to just sort of make your business more profitable.
Correct.
And then sort of with these events, I guess for your business, are you guys what's sort of the limitation? I know you said this year doing about 6 or 7, right? Did you say your limitations are just people, or just can you have let's say 20 events a year? Is that something?
Well, we're going to do probably 28 events this year, large and small. And our limitations are the limitations begin and start with me. Yeah. And the reason I say that is that we've discussed how to scale this business. And what makes us different, especially in our consulting partnerships, where we don't own the events, but we're there to make, and we are hired to manage and create the event for somebody else's. They're expecting our expertise, and you have to be on the ground to see what's going wrong and to train people and to react where they have no experience whatsoever in how to do these things. Since this thing all runs through me, the only way I could see to change this and to make it bigger and more complex is to either go out and buy another agency that has an existing portfolio of events, and then we build on being able to have the staff problem with that model is I'm just really at my point in time in my life, like an ad agency. I don't know if I want to do the ups and downs of hiring and firing staff every year based on who's coming back to the party. So the model is a little hard to scale. It's not like having an ongoing product, except for you do have an annuity with the existing festivals you have. So that's a challenge. And the way we overcome that is by having automated systems for doing a lot of things that we're doing.
Do you also own your own events that you host, I guess, like locally, or is that not something that you're?
Yeah, I mean, we most of the events we have, we own the intellectual property, the name, the branding, all the platforms. We can change groups if they don't want to be part of it, so we do own that, most of those. We just came up with the concept of the pop-up beer garden, which is a mobile beer garden. We're working with Hofbrauhaus Brewery out of Munich, and we started that as a trial last year, and now we'll have probably 7 this year. And so that gives us the opportunity to kind of roll that out nationally with them.
That's cool. Do you have any events in New York City this year?
No, I mean, that's a market I'm not, I'm a little overwhelmed as it is. Our thing is a saturated market in terms of craft beer events. We're trying to pick new projects very carefully when it comes to the traditional craft beer event where it's ticketed. And that's why one of the directions we went with the beer garden. We think that presents a good opportunity for what we do. And I'm not opposed to looking at any opportunities in any markets, but I will tell you, it's expensive and complicated to go further away from your home base. But we have done it. I mean, we're in New Jersey, we're in Pennsylvania, we're in Florida. So, we look at these all individually to see if they make sense.
And then let's say, how much would I'm not sure if you can give price ranges, but how much would an event cost for something like this?
So, I mean, if you add cost of goods and everything into it, probably somewhere around anywhere from $30,000 to $60,000. Okay. Smaller events, not so much. It's predicated more on cost of goods. I'm not a macro guy that way. I like to get in, I never worked for a super large company, but I always like to be able to have my hands on the pulse of what's going on and work with people and not be too disconnected. And that's really my comfort zone.
And then for that 30 to, I guess 60,000, how much of that goes into marketing the event? I'm assuming, because I saw on your website that you guys also help market. Is that part of the
So not including the startup, but this is an actual ad buys. We're not really spending more than spend in that range of $4,000 to $6,000 for an event. Now that it doesn't include the startup of a website and all the things that go into time that takes to do all the platforms from Instagram to Facebook and Twitter accounts, getting all that set up. While those things don't cost money, they take time to. And then the branding, we really pride ourselves in having really nice branding for all of our events to set us aside from some of the other operations out there and try to build some value that way.
Yeah, everybody should just check out your website because all the events that you have, the logos are really good. And I was like, who designs these? They're really good. And it's
we probably have 4 different designers through all those. I have one thing I became many years ago is I became kind of a brand freak. I went through training with a consultant to understand why people make buying consumer decisions or what's credible, what creates that credibility for them, and to understand that relationship between the first time you see a brand, the first time you engage a brand, what makes people believe it. If you have to try to convince them later on with mixed messages, it's got to look like these guys know what they're doing. Even though with new events, we might not look.
Who is this person that you guys trained with? And was it like a year training or what was the training?
Yeah, no, his name was Edward A. Earl with an E on the end. He had a consultancy in Dallas, Texas. I think it was in Dallas. And I was referred to him by a guy that I knew that used him. I don't know if he's in that business anymore, only because he used that business to buy equity into bigger companies by transforming them through branding. And so I think he made millions of dollars doing that. It was an all day, 8 a.m. till 8 p.m. training. And I went out to California where they were doing this. And it was a game changer for me. I was running in addition to my sales and marketing directorship with this manufacturing company, I was given the reins of this small little $3 million company out in Maine that we just acquired. And I went and changed the name of the company and without approval based on this branding thing. And then after we got all done, I ran it by the CEO, and I figured, he's either going to think it's great or he's going to fire me.
Yeah.
And it really changed their trajectory. And I was a firm believer. That was kind of my incubator to see if this stuff really worked.
That's good. And how much was that course or training cost back then?
It was basically, it was one of those things where it was free. You had to pay for yourself to go out there. And what they wanted to do is they wanted to sell you on executing the rebranding or branding of a product. So we turned over, I forget what we spent, but it's probably like 50, 60,000 we spent with them. They wrote the brand story. They wrote the attributes. They interviewed our customers. It was pretty thorough.
So it's kind of like the online version of what you see now with.
Yeah. I'm going to move to the next room. I got to plug you in, man. I'm running low on power. Bear with me.
It's like the online version of what you see online webinars, and then they kind of pitch you for their product. But this is I like this better. It's like you go there, you learn, you talk, you interact with people, and then you do that. Okay. Perfect.
Yeah, it was a game changer for me. Absolutely. I drove everybody in my company nuts because I started rebranding products, and they just thought I was,
Perfect. Okay, yeah, we just have about 2 more questions. So what are some books or maybe that you would recommend to other entrepreneurs that have helped you? Clearly, this branding course has, you said, changed the trajectory of your company and sort of how you view brands. Maybe what's another course or another person that can help other entrepreneurs look at things this way?
Well, I don't have time or don't take the time, and I wish I did, but I spent a lot of time reading. I subscribe to the Wall Street Journal. I spend time reading books about branding and about sales, not looking at any one of these things as the Bible, but it's kind of building blocks. I mean, really what it comes down to is you got to have wants. I mean, you have to want to learn every single day and believe that you're not the end game. A lot of people I know that I hear, I see, they want to be an entrepreneur but simply because they want to be their own boss. Mm-hmm. And that's only one small facet. It has to really be a driver for you. And you have to see the end game, the long game, but you have to keep learning every single day. There's so many of my contemporaries that have not done that. And I'm not talking about entrepreneurs, but I just feel like I've continued to learn and I continue to evolve and get better at things and try to improve on other things.
Yeah, I think exactly what you said. I think some of the best entrepreneurs that we look up to, and even the people I know, kind of like yourself, constantly learning new things and sort of getting better. And there's always this feeling of, I just need to learn more because it just excites you. I could tell by talking about branding, you're just excited about it. It's something that you really love and are passionate about it. And I think exactly what you said, entrepreneurs, the best entrepreneurs are always learning. People was asking oh, how do I can become like Elon Musk? I'm there was a good Quora post about it. And then his wife was first of all, he wouldn't be here. He would be doing and executing and learning exactly the question you're asking for. And that's sort of what people were saying. What you said earlier before, it's sometimes entrepreneurs get caught in that analysis paralysis where they're just thinking about it versus executing.
Yeah.
Perfect. And then just the last question is, where can we go to learn maybe more about yourself or your company?
I would just, Google my name. I mean, my website has a small synopsis, I guess, or overview of my background. And so brewfestpartners.com. And I think that's pretty much it. And in addition to what you've seen on the interview.
When is your most recent event? I think it's going to be March 7th, right?
Yeah, we have one next week in Wellington, Florida. It's a Hofbrau Pop-Up Beer Garden. We just did a beer festival down there 2 weeks ago. And then we have a little bit of a lag before we start again in June. Yeah, and then pretty much June through now, we have 2 new projects for October and 1 for November. So pretty much it's going to be solid with maybe 4 weekends off.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Kurt. Appreciate your time. I've learned a lot talking to you.
Same here. I appreciate your time as well.
This week's episode of Digital Marketing Fastlane was brought to you by the performance marketing experts at Voy Media. Join us again next time as we'll be bringing you more tips, techniques, and know-how to make your online business the very best that it can be. If you have any questions,